There is a quiet kind of loneliness that many seniors know well. It is not the loneliness of an empty house or a silent telephone. It is the loneliness that remains even when children visit, grandchildren laugh nearby, and family members share the same roof. Outwardly, everything appears complete, yet deep inside there is an aching sense that something important is missing. This feeling often grows stronger with age because the heart begins to seek the warmth, appreciation, and closeness that once seemed natural. But Buddhist wisdom gently asks a profound question. Is your peace truly meant to depend on the changing attention of other people? From the Buddhist perspective, suffering often begins when happiness is tied to conditions that are constantly changing. Family members grow older, just as we do. Their responsibilities increase. Their minds become occupied with work, raising children, paying bills, solving problems, and navigating a fast-moving world. Their love may still exist, yet they may express it differently than they once did. When we expect them to fill every emotional need, disappointment quietly takes root. It is not because they are cruel or uncaring, but because no human being can permanently satisfy another person's longing for lasting peace. Imagine carrying an empty bowl wherever you go, hoping that someone else will notice it and fill it for you. Sometimes they place a little kindness into it. Sometimes they forget. Sometimes they are too busy to see it at all. As long as your happiness depends on that bowl being filled by others, your emotional life rises and falls according to circumstances beyond your control. One kind word lifts your spirit. One forgotten phone call breaks your heart. One cancelled visit leaves you wondering whether you still matter. This is the fragile foundation upon which many people unknowingly build their happiness. The Buddha taught that everything in this world is impermanent. People's moods change, relationships evolve, health changes, daily routines shift. Even the closest family bonds experience seasons of closeness and distance. If our peace depends entirely on these changing conditions, then our peace becomes as unstable as the conditions themselves. This is why external comfort can never fully remove inner loneliness. Lasting peace must be cultivated from within, where it cannot be shaken by the unpredictable movements of the outside world. Many seniors spend years silently waiting for someone to notice their sadness. They hope a child will call more often. They hope someone will ask how they truly feel. They hope a grandchild will spend a little more time listening. These desires are deeply human, and there is nothing wrong with wanting connection. However, when these hopes become the only source of emotional fulfillment, every unmet expectation creates another layer of sorrow. The heart begins to measure love by the number of visits, the length of conversations, or the frequency of messages, forgetting that genuine love cannot always be measured by visible actions alone. Buddhist wisdom encourages us to turn inward instead of constantly looking outward. This is not an invitation to reject family or stop loving others. It is an invitation to discover the quiet sanctuary that already exists within your own heart. When you sit peacefully with yourself, observing your thoughts without judgment, you begin to notice that loneliness is not your true identity. It is simply a passing emotional experience, like clouds moving across a vast sky. The sky remains untouched even as the clouds appear and disappear. Mindfulness teaches us to become gentle companions to ourselves. Instead of criticizing ourselves for feeling lonely, we learn to acknowledge the feeling with kindness. We breathe slowly. We observe the emotions without resisting them. We remind ourselves that every human being experiences moments of isolation, regardless of age or circumstance. This simple awareness begins to loosen the grip that loneliness has on the heart. There is also great freedom in recognizing that your value has never depended on how much attention you receive from others. Your worth was never created by your family's praise, nor can it be taken away by their busyness. Every breath you take carries the same sacred value as every other living being. The peace you seek has never been hidden inside another person's approval. It has always rested quietly within your own awareness, patiently waiting to be discovered. When you begin to nourish your own inner life through meditation, gratitude, compassion, and quiet reflection, something remarkable happens. The desperate need for constant reassurance slowly fades. You still appreciate your family's love, but you are no longer emotionally imprisoned by whether they meet every expectation. A visit becomes a gift rather than a necessity. A phone call becomes a blessing rather than the only source of comfort. The heart grows lighter because it is no longer carrying the impossible burden of expecting others to complete what only inner wisdom can fulfill. This transformation does not happen overnight. Years of emotional habits cannot disappear in a single moment. Yet every day offers another opportunity to choose inner peace instead of emotional dependence. Every mindful breath becomes a reminder that true happiness is not something another person gives you. It is something you patiently uncover beneath layers of expectation, attachment, and fear. As this understanding deepens, the loneliness that once seemed overwhelming begins to soften, making room for a quiet contentment that no changing circumstance can easily take away. One of the deepest emotional wounds many seniors carry is the quiet hope that someone will finally understand them completely. They long for a son or daughter to notice the sadness hidden behind a smile. They wish their grandchildren would understand the sacrifices they made throughout life. They hope their spouse, relatives, or close friends will recognize the loneliness, disappointment, or fear they have kept buried inside for years. This longing is natural because every human heart desires to be seen, heard, and understood. Yet Buddhist wisdom gently reminds us that waiting endlessly for others to understand us can become another form of suffering. The more we depend on someone else to recognize every feeling within us, the more vulnerable our peace becomes to disappointment. Think about how different every person's life journey is. Your children did not walk through the same hardships you experienced. They did not witness every sleepless night you endured while raising a family. They cannot fully remember every sacrifice you made, every dream you quietly gave up, or every burden you carried without complaint. Just as you cannot completely enter another person's mind, they cannot fully enter yours. This is not because they do not care. It is because every human being sees the world through the lens of their own experiences, responsibilities, fears, and hopes. Many seniors silently repeat painful thoughts within themselves. Why doesn't anyone ask how I really feel? Why don't they appreciate everything I have done? Why has everyone become so busy? These questions slowly create invisible walls around the heart. Every unanswered expectation becomes another brick. Over time, loneliness grows not only because of physical distance, but because of emotional stories that repeat again and again inside the mind. The Buddha taught that the mind has incredible power. It can create peace, or it can create endless suffering depending on how we relate to our thoughts. When we continuously replay disappointments, compare the present to the past, or expect others to read our hearts without words, we strengthen the very pain we wish to escape. Instead of becoming prisoners of these thoughts, Buddhist practice invites us to observe them with awareness. A thought is simply a thought. It is not an absolute truth. Feelings come and go like waves upon the ocean, but our awareness remains steady beneath them. This is where true healing begins. Rather than asking, "Why doesn't anyone understand me?" we gently turn the question inward and ask, "Do I truly understand myself?" Many people spend decades caring for others while rarely listening to their own hearts. They become parents, workers, caregivers, providers, and supporters. Their entire identity becomes focused on serving those around them. Yet after retirement or later in life, when responsibilities become fewer and silence becomes more common, they suddenly realize they have never taken the time to know themselves beyond the roles they played. Understanding your own heart means becoming curious instead of judgmental. It means sitting quietly without distraction and allowing your emotions to surface naturally. Perhaps beneath your loneliness is grief that was never expressed. Perhaps beneath your anger is fear of being forgotten. Perhaps beneath your disappointment is a simple desire to feel loved once again. These emotions do not need to be pushed away. They need to be acknowledged with kindness, just as you would comfort a frightened child. Mindfulness meditation offers a gentle path toward this understanding. As you sit quietly and observe your breathing, you begin to notice the constant movement of the mind. Thoughts arise, memories appear, regrets return, hopes emerge. Instead of chasing each one or resisting it, you simply observe. Gradually, you discover that your true nature is not the endless stream of thoughts. You are the peaceful awareness that notices them. This realization creates space between you and your emotional suffering. Instead of saying, "I am lonely," you begin to recognize, "A feeling of loneliness is visiting my mind." This small shift transforms your relationship with pain. Self-compassion is another essential teaching on this journey. Many seniors blame themselves for feeling lonely. They believe they should be stronger or more grateful because they still have family around them. They criticize themselves for feeling emotional even when their basic needs are met. But compassion begins by accepting our humanity. Every heart longs for connection. Every person experiences moments of sadness. There is no shame in these feelings. When you stop fighting your emotions and begin treating yourself with the same kindness you once offered others, the heart slowly softens. Buddhist wisdom also teaches that understanding yourself allows you to understand others more deeply. When you recognize your own fears, you become less quick to judge your children for being distracted. When you understand your own attachment, you become more patient with the imperfections of family life. Compassion grows naturally because you realize that everyone carries invisible burdens. Your son may appear distant because of financial worries. Your daughter may seem busy because she is overwhelmed by responsibilities. Your grandchildren may be absorbed in a different world than the one you grew up in. Their behavior is often shaped by struggles you cannot immediately see. This understanding does not erase loneliness overnight, but it changes its meaning. Instead of interpreting every silence as rejection, you begin to see it as part of life's changing nature. Instead of believing you have been forgotten, you recognize that everyone is walking their own path, carrying their own unseen battles. This awareness replaces resentment with wisdom and expectation with compassion. As you continue to understand your own heart, you also rediscover forgotten parts of yourself. You remember interests that once brought you joy. You reconnect with gratitude for simple moments, like watching the sunrise, listening to birds, tending a garden, reading a meaningful book, or sitting peacefully with a cup of tea. These quiet experiences become sources of nourishment because they no longer depend on anyone else's attention or approval. The greatest companion you will ever have is your own awakened mind. Family relationships may change, friends may come and go, circumstances may continue to shift with time, but the peaceful awareness you cultivate within yourself remains available every single day. The more deeply you understand your own heart, the less desperately you seek constant validation from the outside world, and the more naturally compassion, acceptance, and quiet inner peace begin to blossom within you. One of the greatest causes of loneliness in old age is not the absence of family, but the presence of silent expectations. Many seniors carry hopes deep within their hearts without ever speaking them aloud. They expect their children to call more often because they believe love should naturally express itself that way. They expect family members to notice when they are hurting without having to explain it. They hope someone will remember important dates, ask meaningful questions, or simply sit beside them without looking at a phone. These expectations are rarely spoken, yet they quietly shape emotions every single day. When reality does not match these unspoken hopes, disappointment begins to settle into the heart, and over time, disappointment transforms into loneliness. Buddhist wisdom teaches that attachment is one of the roots of suffering. Attachment is not limited to possessions or wealth. We can also become attached to ideas, expectations, memories, and the way we believe life should unfold. We may become attached to the image of how our family ought to behave. We create stories in our minds about what a loving son should do, what a caring daughter should say, or how grandchildren should show respect. These images feel so real that we begin measuring every interaction against them. The moment reality falls short, the mind whispers painful thoughts. They don't care anymore. I must no longer be important. Everyone has forgotten me. Yet these conclusions are often born not from reality itself, but from expectations that remained hidden inside the heart. Imagine holding a tightly closed hand around a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more sand slips through your fingers. Relationships often work in the same way. The more tightly we cling to specific expectations, the more emotional pain we experience when life moves in a different direction. This does not mean we should stop loving our family or stop appreciating their presence. It simply means we must learn the difference between love and attachment. Love gives freely without demanding a particular response. Attachment quietly insists that others behave according to our desires before we can feel at peace. Many seniors compare the present with memories of the past. They remember when their children were young and eagerly sought their advice. They remember family dinners filled with conversation, laughter, and shared traditions. They remember being needed every single day. But life is constantly changing. Children become parents themselves. Careers demand more attention. Technology changes communication. Society moves faster than it once did. While these changes may feel painful, resisting them only creates greater suffering. The Buddha repeatedly reminded his followers that everything conditioned by time is subject to change. When we resist this universal truth, we suffer not because change is wrong, but because we wish it were not happening. Silent expectations also create invisible conversations inside the mind. You may replay the same disappointment over and over. Why didn't they invite me? Why didn't they ask my opinion? Why do they seem happier with others than with me? These thoughts become habits. Eventually, they no longer reflect isolated events. They become the lens through which every interaction is viewed. A missed phone call becomes proof of rejection. A short visit becomes evidence of neglect. The mind begins collecting examples that support its painful beliefs while overlooking the many quiet expressions of love that still exist. Buddhist mindfulness encourages us to observe these mental habits with honesty and compassion. Instead of immediately believing every thought that arises, we ask ourselves, is this thought creating peace or is it creating suffering? Many expectations survive only because they remain unquestioned. Once we shine the light of awareness upon them, we begin to recognize how much emotional energy they consume. We realize that we have been waiting for others to behave differently before allowing ourselves to feel happy. This realization is not discouraging. It is liberating because it returns the responsibility for inner peace to where it has always belonged. Another powerful practice is learning to replace expectation with appreciation. Instead of focusing entirely on what family members fail to do, we begin noticing what they still offer. A brief phone call may not last an hour, but it is still a connection. A grandchild's smile may be quick, but it carries warmth. A simple message asking how you are can become a reminder that love often appears in quiet forms rather than dramatic gestures. Gratitude does not deny what is missing, but it prevents the heart from becoming blind to what remains. Compassion also grows when we recognize that our loved ones are living through struggles we may never fully understand. A son who forgets to call may be carrying financial stress that keeps him awake at night. A daughter who seems distracted may be balancing work, children, and personal worries. A grandchild who spends less time visiting may be navigating the pressures of education, friendships, and an uncertain future. Their silence is not always a measure of their love. Sometimes it is simply the weight of their own responsibilities. When we release the expectation that others must always express love in the ways we prefer, we create space for deeper understanding and greater emotional freedom. This does not mean accepting neglect or pretending hurtful behavior does not matter. Buddhism does not encourage suppressing emotions or denying reality. Instead, it invites honest awareness without bitterness. If something needs to be expressed, speak with kindness rather than resentment. If your heart longs for more connection, communicate gently instead of expecting others to read your thoughts. Open conversations often dissolve misunderstandings that silent expectations quietly strengthen. As expectations gradually loosen their grip, something beautiful begins to emerge. Relationships become lighter because they are no longer burdened by invisible demands. Visits become moments to cherish rather than opportunities to measure what is lacking. Conversations become opportunities for connection instead of silent tests of affection. The heart becomes more spacious because it is no longer constantly comparing reality with imagined ideals. The Buddha often compared the peaceful mind to a calm lake. When the water is disturbed by attachment, anger, or expectation, it cannot clearly reflect the world. But when the water becomes still, everything appears with greater clarity. In the same way, when the heart releases silent expectations, it begins to experience family with fresh eyes. Love is recognized in ordinary moments. Kindness is noticed where it was once overlooked. Gratitude quietly replaces resentment, and inner peace begins to grow stronger than the disappointments that once seemed impossible to overcome. There comes a moment in the life of many seniors when loneliness no longer feels like an occasional visitor, but like a permanent companion. The days seem longer, the evenings grow quieter, familiar voices become less frequent, and the house that once echoed with conversations now carries only the sound of passing time. At first, the heart naturally resists this experience. It asks, why has this happened to me? Why do I feel so alone even though I still have people who love me? Yet Buddhist wisdom offers a surprising perspective. It teaches that loneliness is not merely a painful condition to escape. It can become one of life's greatest teachers if we are willing to meet it with awareness instead of fear. The Buddha taught that every experience in life, whether pleasant or painful, contains the possibility of awakening. Most people spend their lives chasing pleasure and avoiding discomfort. They believe happiness can only exist when everything is going according to their wishes. But suffering often becomes the doorway through which wisdom enters the heart. Loneliness, when understood deeply, has the power to reveal truths that constant busyness and endless distractions often hide. When you are surrounded by noise, it is difficult to hear your own heart. Throughout life, many people become so occupied with raising children, building careers, paying bills, solving family problems, and meeting countless responsibilities that they rarely spend time sitting quietly with themselves. Decades pass without asking simple but profound questions. Who am I beyond my roles? What remains when the responsibilities of life become fewer? Where does true peace come from? Loneliness creates the silence in which these questions naturally arise. Instead of seeing that silence as an enemy, Buddhist practice encourages us to welcome it as an opportunity for deep self-discovery. Imagine a lotus flower growing in a muddy pond. No one admires the mud, yet without it, the lotus could never bloom. In the same way, emotional pain often becomes the fertile ground from which compassion, wisdom, and spiritual maturity emerge. If life had always been comfortable, perhaps you would never have searched for a deeper kind of happiness. If every expectation had always been fulfilled, perhaps you would never have realized that lasting peace cannot depend on changing circumstances.